My dream.
But no. But each and every one of us in Klal Yisrael can experience the Beis Hamikdash, right? It's in our neshama. Our neshama saw the Beis Hamikdash, but ourselves going through the 3 weeks called the Bein Hametzarim, we followed the takanas of the Chazal, Chachamim, and we were in Avelis for 3 weeks over the Churban Beis Hamikdash, over something we have no idea what it looked like. Even the different commentaries that tells us the Beis Hamikdash looked this way or that way, or the menorah was this way, the Klei Hamikdash was this way, right? How are we doing? So the fact that we don't really have a perfect and exact description of the Beis Hamikdash, right? We still fulfilled the Takanas Chachamim. We mourned these last 3 weeks, right? And so we developed in our minds and in our hearts and our souls what the Beis Hamikdash was all about, right? And the truth of the matter is, we ourselves are. It says, "V'asu li migdash v'shachanti b'socham." I heard this many times. You probably heard this too. That we in ourselves have to make a migdash out of ourselves, because that's who our neshama is. That's who our heart is, right? So if we ourselves have the feeling of the Churban Beis Hamikdash, we sit. You know what? Nobody's going to sit down on the floor, and nobody's going to take off their shoes, and nobody's going to stop eating and drinking on a hot day in the summer, right? Without having some kind of a feeling, even it's the slightest feeling, that counts in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we just went through this trip, right? And we experienced it. And because we went through this trip, do you know what we're all zocha to? Something that we all know, called the Shiva Nechemta.
Right.
What is the Shiva Nechemta all about? Shiva Nechemta is the 7 weeks from Tisha B'Av goes until Rosh Hashanah, right? It's called 7 weeks of comfort. Nechama.
Oh, Nechama. Oh, right now.
Right.
It's
right.
the Haftorahs.
What?
It's
Right.
the
So
Haftorahs.
there's 7 Haftorahs
Right.
that we read, and these Haftorahs are not docha. What does that mean? We do not push these Haftorahs away,
Right.
with one exception. There's always an exception.
Rosh Chodesh?
Rosh Chodesh, right.
Yeah.
If Rosh Chodesh falls on Shabbos, we don't read from the Shiva Nechemta, but we read the Rosh Chodesh one, and it's going to happen Rosh Chodesh Elul. The first day of Rosh Chodesh Elul is Shabbos. Now, so what's the reason for that? So the reason is, if you take a look at the Haftorah of Rosh Chodesh on Shabbos, it talks about the Beis Hamikdash. And that's
and it has Divrei Nechama.
right. Very good.
So it's
Okay, here's another person who's really tuned in. Very nice. Good. And I see you're also tuned in.
Oh, yeah.
Very nice. Good.
World.
All right, good. So what does it mean to be Zocha to the Shiva Nechemta? Right? So if, like I said, if we have no idea what the Beis Hamikdash looked like, we do know what the Beis Hamikdash was because we learn about it, right?
Right.
And the fact that we went through the periods of mourning, we have a feel for it. Every Jew has a feel for the Beis Hamikdash, and that's why, again, we take ourselves and put ourselves in a situation of mourning over something we never saw. Right? Imagine that. Chas v'shalom, a person has a very distant relative. You go back 10 generations, right? And this distant relative has his yahrzeit today, right? So first of all, you probably won't say Kaddish, you probably won't daven, you won't give a Kiddush, right? You have no idea who he is. You may know his name, right? Or let's say even if you have a distant cousin, a distant relative living in a different part of town, or even in the same town, but you have no connection to him, you probably won't mourn his passing, if he reaches his 120 years, right? So, because there's no connection, there's no bond, right? So, what Avelus does, And if you do want to create a bond, which is a nice thing, if the person has no mourners, he has no relatives, and you're one of us is you're the only living relative, it's a mitzvah to say Kaddish for him if nobody ever says Kaddish, right? So right, right. So but so through saying Kaddish, it's a form of mourning, even though it's after a year. It could be a year later, whatever the story is. It's the mourning of thinking about that person creates the bond, even though it's not a strong bond, but it's a bond, a good enough bond that he himself, his neshama up there, wherever he is, and hopefully, I'm sure all neshamas going to good places, could even be a Melitz Yosher for you. For any one of us, right? What is a male? Everybody know what a Melitz Yosher is, right? Melitz Yosher. He can speak up in our behalf in Shemayim. Right.
Like I have a relative that they wrote a book about it. It was Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld.
Right.
And I read the book, The Guardian of Jerusalem.
Uh-huh.
I hope that should be a bond between myself and Rabbi Yosef Chaim.
That's right. So you can do it. So we can. I'm glad you brought that up. That's a very good point. I didn't even think of that. Right. Let's say we talk about the good past, Gedolim of the past. Talk about Tanoim, Damarim. How do you have a shaykhus, a connection to them? You just learn about them, right?
Right.
And then you feel a holiness when you think of their names, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you talk about Abaya and Rava, right? Chafetz Chaim, great luminaries, even Rabban Kotler, Rav Ruderman, right? The other here in Rosh Hashiva in Israel. You think about these people, these great people, the ones who really laid a wonderful foundation for us even after the Holocaust, right? So you create a bond with them, and especially that's why it's also a mitzvah to go if you're not a Kohen. It's a mitzvah to go to Kivrei Tzadikim, right? Because you create. It's not only you look for brachos. You want to get something out of it too. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like you have you have different rebbes. They say if you could come to their Tzion, their kever, you'll be blessed, right? And a lot of cases, stories you have that they were blessed.
I went to the Yanuka.
Oh, was that? Yeah, that's the Amuka, right? That's right. Yeah, that's one example, right? But the idea is what?
Yonas ben Uziel.
Right. Yonas ben Uziel.
Targum Yonas.
Okay, everybody's good.
Well, that's
okay.
a big guy.
Yonas
Yeah,
ben
yeah.
Uziel is right.
Right.
Yeah.
So here's the point. The point is that this is how we create. If you're willing to mourn over somebody, especially you don't know, and how do you mourn Abaya and Rava? You see what they contributed, they gave us, and now you don't have them. So you're inspired over the fact of if Abaya and Rava was alive and I can go speak to Abaya and Rava, boy, I would be a different person altogether. I know it.
Well, you learn
Right.
their Torah, and that's
Right.
how.
Sure.
It's the Sifsei Tzadikim.
Right. If you also they're that, which means their lips move in their grave if you say Torah over their name and their Torah, not different thing. So this is the way to do it. So when we have the Shiva, we are zocha to the Shiva Nechemta because we were in Avelis for 3 years over something that we never saw. So why Shiva Nechemta? What's so special about Shiva Nechemta? Because our tefillos, we were mispal every day, 3 times a day, and we right.
There's a Shiva Rakiyim in Shemayim.
Right. That's what I want to get to. Right. So there are 7 heavens, right?
Right.
So we want our tefillos to penetrate the Shiva Rikia, the 7 heavens, and reach all the way to the Kisei HaKavod, right?
Yeah.
So the way to do that is you have to give of yourself. You have to do things to show that you really want HaKadosh Baruch Hu's tefillos. You want your tefillos, HaKadosh Baruch Hu to answer them. So the way to do that is you have to show that you want HaKadosh Baruch Hu to be that he is the master, and that he too is suffering with us in Golus, and he too is suffering over the fact he does not have his Beis Hamikdash, his Makom Menucha, right? So the Shiva Nechemta is connected the Shiva Rikias, the Shiva, the 7 weeks before the Yom Hadid.
Right.
This is for us a hachana of the Yom Hadid. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving us an opportunity through the Shiva Nechemta, through the 7 weeks of comfort, to realize and wake up about what we're missing. We're missing, it's right, the first 3 weeks we were in Avelus over the Beis HaMikdash, right? So now that the Avelus has ended, right, so we appreciate the Beis HaMikdash even though we never saw it, right? And the fact that we show that we appreciate something that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us even though we never saw it, right? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us 7 weeks, right? 7 weeks of opportunity to get more acquainted with Him through the Nechama. You want to get close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you have to mourn His loss. You understand that? You got to mourn His loss.
The Shekhinah Begalusa.
Right. That's part of it, right. I wasn't thinking of that point, but I'm glad you brought it out. You're on the ball today. Okay, right. Right. Shekhinah Begalusa, but to mourn His Beis HaMikdash, right? So if you're willing to mourn something that belonged to it belonged to Klal Yisrael, the Beis HaMikdash, right? But it was really HaKadosh Baruch Hu's house, right? So to mourn that something that belonged to somebody, even though we had the rights to it, right? He gave it to us. And to mourn, like if a friend, Chas v'shalom, loses something, right? And you're despondent over the fact that he lost something that wasn't even yours, right? But you care. That's Neisel Be'el Chavero, right? So who is the biggest chaver? Who is the biggest Neisel Be'el Chavero in the world? Kadosh Baruch Hu. He cares about every single Yachid in Klal Yisrael, right? He even cares about Gayim. Yeah, cares about his Bria, everything, right? Neisel Be'el Chavero. You can't get a bigger chaver than HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? So, and what does chaver mean? Chaver means chibur, attach. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is attached to us. And here, we're given 7 weeks of opportunity. He allows us to attach Himself to us. He allows us to attach ourselves to Him, rather, right? And timing is perfect, because what's going to be in 7 weeks? We're going to stand before Him in judgment, and we sure want to be on good terms with the Judge of Judges, right? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu has it worked out perfectly for us, right? Isn't that great? Now that's called Neisel Be'el Chavero. If only we, not we, I mean we, of course, I'm talking about everybody in the world, should really be that way, right? So now, so that's the point of the Shiva Nechemta. So we're now experiencing the first week of the Shiva Nechemta. Now what